Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
She admitted it outright. I don't love you. I only stayed because I didn't want to raise this child by myself. I looked at her for a long second and answered, then you won't have to worry about me anymore. Later that same day, a phone call from the doctor delivered a revelation I never saw coming. I had spent the entire morning wrestling with a crib that seemed designed by someone who hated parents. Endless tiny screws, diagrams that looked like abstract art, instructions written in another language. But finally it stood complete in the corner of the room I was turning into a nursery. I stepped back, paint roller still in hand, and felt a quiet surge of pride. In 6 months, my little boy would sleep right there. That's when my girlfriend, Melissa, appeared in the doorway. She wasn't smiling. She hadn't smiled much in weeks, but I chalked it up to pregnancy fatigue and shifting hormones. I was about to point out the finished crib when I noticed how distant her expression was. Blank, almost detached. We need to talk, she said, voice flat and colorless. Okay, I replied, a knot already forming in my stomach. You feeling all right? Nausea again. I'm fine, she said. She stepped inside but kept her distance, hovering near the door as if ready to bolt. I just need to be honest with you. I waited. This isn't working, she continued. I frowned. What isn't? The color on the walls? I can change it if you hate it. No, she finally met my eyes. They were cold, stripped of warmth. The relationship. I don't love you. The words hit like a slap, but they didn't fully land at first. We'd been together 3 years. We were building a family. This had been our shared dream. What are you talking about, Melissa? My voice cracked despite my effort to stay calm. Of course you love me. You're carrying our son. A thin, bitter smile tugged at her mouth. No, I don't. And honestly, I'm not sure I ever truly did. You were safe, reliable, convenient. I thought I could force it to work, but I can't anymore. It felt as though the floor had dropped out from under me. Every memory of the past 3 years suddenly seemed counterfeit. I wasn't her partner. I was a fallback option she decided to discard. Then why? I managed, nodding toward her rounded belly. Why go through all this? She shrugged, as if the question bored her. It happened. When the test came back positive, I panicked. I didn't want to be a single mother. I can't afford it on my own. So I just went along with your vision of the happy family. Then she laid out the rest of her plan, calm and clinical, like she was pitching a business arrangement. We'd stay together a couple of years after the baby arrived. I'd handle the finances, play the devoted dad. Once she was stable again, we'd separate quietly. She spoke as though she was doing me a favor by spelling it out. I set the paint roller down, wiped my hands slowly on a rag, and met her gaze. Then you won't have to worry about me anymore, I said as I walked past her, grabbed my keys and wallet, and left the apartment without another word. I didn't look back. I got in the car and drove aimlessly. Streetlights blurred into streaks of color. The city sliding past like a film reel I wasn't part of anymore. My mind replayed her words on an endless loop, her indifferent shrug, her icy eyes. 3 years reduced to a convenience. I'd been nothing more than a safety net. The ache was physical, a crushing weight on my chest. I ended up on the highway, crawling along in the slow lane, numb. After an hour, I pulled into a rest stop and shut off the engine. Silence rushed in, heavy and absolute. That I sat there trying to map out the next move in a life that had just imploded. Find a new place? Call in sick tomorrow? Tell my parents their longed-for grandchild was built on a foundation of lies? The thought made bile rise in my throat. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Expecting Melissa trying to negotiate, I almost hurled the phone across the dashboard. But the screen showed an unknown number. I answered, voice rough from disuse. Hello. May I speak with Mark, please? A polite female voice. This is Mark. Hi. This is Susan from Dr. Evans's office. The doctor wanted to discuss your recent lab results personally. Can you hold for just a moment? I almost laughed at the timing. A month earlier, Melissa had pushed me to get a full physical. For the baby's sake, she'd said. The irony was suffocating. Sure, I muttered. Doctor. Evans came on the line shortly after. Mark, thanks for taking my call. When the full panel came back, some markers were unusual, so we ran additional genetic testing twice to be certain. The results indicate you have congenital bilateral absence of the vas deferens. I had no idea what that meant. Is it serious? There was a brief pause. It means you're infertile, Mark. You were born without the vas deferens, the tubes that carry sperm. It's a lifelong condition, present since birth. He started explaining future options, IVF, adoption, but the words blurred. One thought sliced through everything else, sharp and undeniable. If I'm infertile, this baby can't be mine. Suddenly, the past months rearranged themselves into hideous clarity. Her growing distance wasn't hormonal. Her recoiling from my touch wasn't exhaustion. She'd been carrying guilt, and today's confession wasn't bravery. It was damage control. She'd admitted the lesser sin, not loving me, to bury the greater one, cheating. She'd been testing whether I'd accept a loveless marriage and willingly raise another man's child. She'd banked on me never discovering the truth. The heartbreak evaporated, replaced by a cold, dense fury. I started the engine. I knew exactly where I was going now. When I walked back into the apartment, Melissa was lounging on the couch, scrolling her phone. She looked up, startled. Clearly, she'd expected me to stay gone longer, perhaps crying at a friend's place. She arranged her features into cautious sympathy. Had some time to think? She asked softly, as if soothing a child. I know it's a shock, but staying together really is the best thing for the baby. I didn't respond. I walked to the kitchen island and stood watching her. My silence unnerved her more than shouting ever could. What? She snapped, voice sharpening. Are you going to say something? I got an interesting call while I was out, I said evenly. Your mom? Did you already tell her? Annoyance flickered across her face. Dealing with my family wasn't in her timeline. No. It was my doctor. I watched her closely, just mild confusion. He had results from the physical you insisted I get, so I'd be healthy for the baby. Turns out they discovered a genetic condition I was born with. I paused, letting it sink in. She waited. It's called congenital bilateral absence of the vas deferens. Feel free to Google it. It means I'm sterile, Melissa. Always have been. Always will be. The transformation on her face is burned into my memory forever. Color drained away. The smug composure shattered. Panic flooded in, wide and raw. Her mouth opened soundlessly. She glanced at her belly, then back at me. That can't be right, she stammered. Labs make mistakes. They ran it twice, I said, voice like steel. No mistake. So the only question left is, whose baby is it? She trembled, speechless. The carefully constructed facade collapsed completely. You were going to let me raise him, I continued, low and dangerous. Let me paint his room, assemble his crib, love him, support him, knowing full well he wasn't mine. You stood there acting noble about not loving me, when you were just a liar who got exposed. I was going to tell you, she cried, tears starting. But they were tears of terror, not regret. Eventually, when the timing was better, stop lying, I cut in, voice finally rising. There was never going to be a better time. You wanted this lie to become my entire life. I took a steadying breath, forcing the rage into something colder, more useful. Here's what's going to happen now, I said, opening my laptop. You attempted to defraud me, trap me into 18 years of financial obligation for a child that isn't mine. That carries consequences. So you're going to repay every dollar I spent on this deception. She blinked, confused. Repay you for what? Everything. I began pulling up bank statements. Half the rent since you learned you were pregnant. Half the utilities. All the maternity clothes, prenatal vitamins, doctor visit copays, the new mattress for your back pain, the crib, the paint, every single expense. You're insane, she whispered. I don't have that money. Not my problem, I replied. You should have considered the cost before trying to destroy my life. I estimate around 16,000. I'll get the precise figure, and you'll sign a legally binding promissory note for the full amount. I won't, she said, grasping for defiance. You will, I said calmly, because the alternative is me calling your parents, your loving, traditional, deeply religious parents, and telling them exactly what their daughter did. Cheated, got pregnant, and tried to trick her devoted boyfriend into raising another man's child. I'll happily forward my medical report. The threat struck perfectly. Her parents' approval was her lifeline. Losing it was unthinkable. She stared at me, defeated, and finally nodded once. The next 2 hours were methodical. I sat at the kitchen table, combing through months of transactions, adding each item to a spreadsheet. Rent shares, groceries, the pricey pregnancy pillow, the deposit for the upscale OB she demanded. She sat silently on the couch, watching the total climb. Final amount, $16,247. I downloaded a standard promissory note template, filled in names, amount, and a reasonable interest clause for late payments, then printed it. I placed the document and a pen on the coffee table in front of her. Her hand shook as she signed, tears spotting the paper. I folded the signed note, slipped it into my pocket, then went to the bedroom and began packing a suitcase. Within the hour, I was gone. First stop, the bank, where I opened a new account and transferred my share of our joint funds. Next morning, I notified the landlord I was breaking the lease, losing the deposit and 1 extra month's rent, a price I gladly paid and promptly added to Melissa's growing invoice. I blocked her number, unfollowed and blocked her everywhere, and gave friends and family a carefully edited breakup story, asking them to respect my privacy. The fallout for Melissa was swift and merciless, from what I later heard. Alone with an unaffordable apartment, a pregnancy, and a binding debt to the man she'd tried to ruin, she had to contact the real father, a married coworker. He initially denied everything, then, fearing exposure to his wife, offered hush money but refused any involvement with the child. Her carefully engineered safety net disintegrated. In the end, she had to do the very thing she'd schemed to avoid. Move back home with her parents at 31, pregnant and broke. Every month a small payment appeared in my new account, a humiliating reminder of her collapse. Time passed. I found a new apartment, threw myself into work, reconnected with old friends, and slowly healed. The betrayal still stung, but it was increasingly overshadowed by relief. I'd escaped a trap I hadn't even known existed. The infertility diagnosis, initially devastating, ultimately proved to be my salvation. The one irrefutable fact that set me free. Roughly 7 months later, an email arrived from an unfamiliar address. Subject line, just my name. I opened it. Attached was a photo of a newborn swaddled in a hospital blanket. My chest tightened briefly, an echo of the fatherhood I'd once imagined. Below the photo, a long, rambling message. He's here. His name is Daniel. He's perfect. I know I ruined everything, Mark. I was terrified and selfish and made awful choices. I think about you constantly. When I look at him, I see the life we could have had. I'm so sorry. I know I don't deserve it, but please, can we forget about the money? I can't manage this alone. I need help. It was one final, desperate manipulation, using an innocent baby as leverage. The old me might have wavered. The new me felt only resolve. I didn't reply. Instead, I logged into the repayment portal and triggered an automated reminder showing her remaining balance, $15, $8.21, and the upcoming due date. Then I archived the email and returned to the forms I'd been completing. Preliminary paperwork for domestic adoption. The diagnosis hadn't erased my desire to be a father. It had simply changed the route that I would build a family, on my own terms, grounded in honesty and truth. Her life lay in ruins because of the lies she chose. Mine was just beginning, because the truth had found its way to me.